of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Selectman Kylie to lead us today.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm going to ask that everyone remain standing for a moment of silence for First Selectman Mike Tetro's mother, Marion Rowena Tetro. Thank you. I'd just like to take a moment. Obviously, the First Selectman is unable to be here with us today, and though I did not know his mother, Mrs. Tetro, very well, as many people throughout Fairfield did, it's clear in reading her obituary that she was a person who was all about caring for others, and she had a real sense of commitment. She cared for others, especially young people, and I think it's fitting today that we will be honoring some young people. And also her sense of commitment, 64 years of married life, and clearly her commitment to her sons. So we join, as the Board of Selectmen, the community in offering our prayers and thoughts to the Tetro family and the First Selectmen as they enter into some very difficult days ahead. So with that, I would like to introduce former First Selectman Sherry Stenick for our Wednesday's pet.
And we have doubled the trouble or double the fun, whichever way you want to look at it today. These are two Lhasa Apso poodle mixes, Vera and Mo, and they're both about 7 years old. And they're very friendly. And they also don't shed, just cut their hair. So anybody who's looking for two really friendly, pleasant dogs, stop by 201 One Red Highway.
Right.
I just lost it. Seeing it, you didn't let me know. Okay. 201.
211 One Rod Highway, 203-254-4857.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And if the First Selectman were here, he would ask you again how your batting average is, so I will.
You're doing great.
Yes, thank you for doing that. You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
So today we have some contest winners here with us. We have some young people. So I'm actually going to ask Selectman Kylie if perhaps we could come stand in front of the table and we will call forward our winners and say a few words. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So we have 3 winners in town, one of whom was unable to be with us today. And I would like, if I could call you forward, we have Owen Kenny. We also have Brendan McMahon. The other student who is not able to be here with us is Anastasia Martavina from Mill Hill Elementary School. So we also congratulate her. Before we give you your awards and talk about your recognition, actually, we may have you say a word or two about what it was that you did. Why don't you, Mr. Spino, can you hear these boys from here? If they,
I don't know, they're not talking.
All right. Maybe, Owen, if I could put you on the spot, what is it that what was the contest you entered? Could you tell the audience here what it was that you did to win an award?
Well, I wrote an essay about the American turtle.
Great.
So Swiss submarine.
Great. And Brendan, maybe you can tell us, and where did you submit?
I did a PowerPoint one just about submarines, not just the first one. I did all those submarines.
About submarines?
Yeah. For
Wonderful.
Connecticut's best invention.
For Connecticut's best invention. And you submitted this to whose office? Do you remember the contest name?
I'll give you the Secretary of State.
That's right, the Secretary of State's 2013 essay contest. And I would also like to note that today we have with us Brendan and Owen's principals from Burr School. We have Principal Bluestein, and from Stratfield School, we have Principal McGoey. Before we give you your awards, I also want to thank your parents and your teachers for really encouraging you and all of our children to strive for excellence and to challenge yourselves, stretch yourselves beyond your comfort zones, and really achieve positive results and make our community proud. So with that, in fact, Mr. Kiley, do you want to say a few words before we?
I just want to congratulate you gentlemen and our third winner, and we're very proud of you, and your parents and your schools should be as well.
Okay, so to Owen Kenny, congratulations to Stratfield Elementary School student Owen Kenny for winning second place in the Secretary of State's 2013 essay contest. And congratulations to Burr Elementary School student Brendan McVan for winning third place in the Secretary of State's 2013 PowerPoint contest.
Well done.
All right. you
Very
boys-
well done.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Actually, Brendan, I should note that submarines are a special interest of mine. My husband served on a submarine for a number of years, so it's an interesting topic.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're on to item number 5, our minutes. To consider and act upon the minutes of the special meeting of May 14th, 2013, the regular meeting of May 15th, 2013, and the special meeting of May 22nd, 2013. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, I will second that. Is there discussion?
Yes, I'm fine with the minutes, and I'm fine approving them, and I just wonder if we want to, do we want to hold this over in Mr. Tetro's absence for his opinion and vote on it?
I concur. I think it's absolutely wise to do so that we can have a unanimous approval and be sure that we're all on board as those are the official records.
Right, so, that said, I'll move to postpone item 5 to a date certain, that date being June 19th, the next Board of Selectmen meeting.
All right, we'll second that motion. Any further discussion on that? Okay, any comment from the public? Okay, we ready for a vote? Aye. All right. Item number 6, resignations, which is for information purposes only. We have 3 resignations from the Fire Commission. We have Richard Popolowski, Canterbury Lane, term November 2010 to November 2015. From the Golf Commission, we have Tammy K. Peterson, Oakwood Drive, term April 2009 to April 2014. And Riverfield School Building Committee, Dorothy D'Amica, Umpqua Road, and actually I don't have her term listed. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of those who have served and for the work that they have done, both on these commissions and in some cases on other bodies in the town. Item number 7, for information purposes only, First Selectman appointment. The First Selectman has appointed to the Conservation Commission from alternate to full member Samuel Boyarsky, Democrat, 200 Autumn Ridge Road, term November 2012 to November 2017, to replace Letitia Ferguson, who resigned. And the appointment date is May 28th, 2013. Moving on to item number 8, appointments, which we will vote on today. We have 3 appointments to the Land Acquisition Commission. We have Ian Balin, 1600 Kings Highway East, term November 2010 to November 2013, alternate to replace Philip Dwyer, who resigned. Victoria Frankenberg, 149 South Street, term November 2009 to November 2013, to replace Stanley Garrell, who resigned, and Michael Widmer, Brookside Drive, term November 2012 to November 2016, alternate to replace Karen Hinch, whose term has expired. May I have a motion to approve
So moved.
and a second. Is there discussion on the item?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to thank our 3 new appointees for volunteering to step up and serve on this very important land acquisition committee, this commission. And they've done a lot of wonderful work since they've been in place since 1998, I believe was the first year that they were put in place. And I had the luxury of being on the Board of Finance that first year that we created the commission, and allocated that first $13+ million to go out and identify parcels of open space and begin identifying, finding them, and making the purchases for our town. They've done a stellar job since that time. They don't run with as much money these days, but they run with as much enthusiasm and love for land as ever. And it's a job that just is important to our town and must continue, finding space and preserving it. So thank you. They have great resumes, and I'm sure they'll all do a great job for us.
Thank you, Selectman Kiley, and I appreciate that you shared those words. I was remiss in recognizing our appointees present. I know we have one who is here, and then another Ms. Frankenberg, and Mr. Widmer. Great, wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I would echo, as I have been a lot lately, Selectman Kiley.
That'll get you in trouble.
That's okay. I actually, as Selectman Kiley said, we don't have much of, if any, budget, actually. So this body really is a body that is about thinking into the future as well. So I hope and anticipate that as we move forward,
Yeah.
that will change, but appreciate very much your willingness to serve.
Yes.
So are there any comments from the public at this time? Okay, back to the board. Any further comment?
No, ma'am.
All right, ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank
each
you.
of As is our custom, if any of you would like to say a word at the podium, you are welcome to do so. You're not obligated to do so.
I'm good,
No?
just thrilled. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 9, the Board of Library Trustees, Board of Selectmen approval process. Michelle McCabe, Democrat, 1060 Merritt Street, term July 2013 to July 2019, to replace Mary Ellen McLean, whose term is expiring. And this position is appointed by the Library Board of Trustees and then approved by the Board of Selectmen. So may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second. And is there discussion?
Just briefly, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees for bringing Ms. McCabe forward. She has a wonderful resume, and based on her resume and her volunteerism over the years, it looks like she's going to be a not just qualified, but a fantastic addition to your board, and we wish her and you all the best of luck.
Yes, absolutely. I concur. We're very fortunate to have Ms. McCabe, and I see some excited faces in the audience. Hopefully you'll be as excited when she has to go to the meetings at night. So. Is there any comment from the public? Okay, with no further comment, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, would you like to say a few words, or?
Just to say that I'm thrilled and I'm looking forward to putting all of my energy into helping the library.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Item number 10 is a request for the use of the town green. To hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Hindu Cultural Center of Connecticut for the use of Town Hall Green for their 7th Annual Heritage India Festival, Sunday, September 29th, 2013, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Is there discussion on this?
Just briefly, it's a wonderful event, sharing the culture, the Hindu culture with the citizens and residents of our town and our region, and I'm happy to support them coming back for a 7th year on the town green.
As am I. And I know we do have a representative here.
We do.
From the group. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any comment from the public?
Please come on up to the podium.
No, I just wanted to say.
Actually, could you please go to the podium?
We all.
Yeah, they have to
viewing
record
public
your
would like
voice
to-
for the,
to hear you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
And if you would also identify yourself so that everyone knows your name and who you are.
My name is Dr. Bala. I'm recently, last month, I retired from Fairfield University as a professor of finance. I'm the former chairman of this organization, Hindu Culture Center, and I just really want to appreciate to you that the township has been very kind to give us the opportunity to hold our session, Heritage Foundation, on the month of this September every year, and I tell you the people in the town are very appreciative of our efforts, and we hope you join us at the time on the month of September to give us some appreciation and for our join of with all of our members. I'm sorry to say you, because I have just a reason of my purpose of my retirement is that I got some problem and I can't speak that much. So thank you very much. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you for being
Bye-bye.
Okay, any further comment? Are we ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Item number 11, from the Director of Public Works, to hear, consider, and approve the granting of an easement to Skyview Solar for the purpose of erecting a photovoltaic electric generation system at the Postal Recreation Center parking lot at 75 Mill Plain Road for the sole benefit of the Postal Recreation Center, the term of the agreement being 20 years. And we have with us Mr. Ed Bowman from Public Works, and I will turn it over to you to present. Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
This is a result of winning one of the small D-rig bids the state put out for installing green power. Actually, the company won two for us, one on Operation Hope and one for the rec center. This will provide for, in terms of the recreation center, about 100,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a year, and the price for that electricity will be about 8.8 cents compared to the 15.5 cents we're paying now. And that price will be fixed for 20 years, so it'll never go up. The easement is necessary because they're putting it in the parking lot, and it'll be a covered carport type of thing. It'll be lit underneath to show you what it could look like from here. And it also has the opportunity to put electric charging stations in there with that at each end, so they'll be lit underneath, and it'll be electric charging stations for cars also associated with that.
So rather than putting it on a roof, we're almost creating a roof canopy.
The roof was couldn't handle the weight for the system. Also, the roof. It's faced in a different direction. The K-Tons from the railroad actually shade the roof and got in the way of it, so tried to use the parking lot instead. And it allows for a much bigger system, obviously.
Definitely. Selectman Kylie, do you have questions?
Just a quick comment, a quick question. This is a great program, and it's great savings for our town, and it's a great green initiative, and thank you for all of that. And it looks like everything is in order. I just have one question on the document itself. Has the town attorney just reviewed this easement from the town's legal perspective?
Yes, he has.
So he has signed off on
Yes.
it? Okay.
And I actually had asked that question earlier today, so
Okay.
that's a good question. Mr. Bowman, from this depiction, it looks like pretty much the entire parking lot?
No, this
will
is
be-
just
or
a
is this
sample. It'll be about half the parking lot.
So it'll
Just
be
a
about
sample of
half-
what it would look like, that's all.
Okay, right, I know that's not our parking lot, but,
No.
so it'll be
Right.
about half the parking
Yeah,
lot.
the
will
lot,
be.
the back half, not
Okay.
as you come in off Mill Plain Road, the half facing the development behind it.
Okay.
The back half you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
And in terms of the document itself, the process that is in that second whereas paragraph in terms of site plans, planning and zoning approvals and all that, can you just give us a sense, process-wise? You're here, where else are you gonna need to go, and what's the timeline for that?
It'd be planning and zoning next, just
Next
to,
one.
in order to get the, well, actually, we have to go to the RTM for the easement also, and planning and zoning for the site plan for approval. So we're trying to get that done as soon as possible. He would like to install this summer. So in the next month or two, we should try and get all the approvals here.
Do you go for the approvals at the same time, or do you have to go to the RTM before you go to zoning, or can you go at the same
You
time?
could probably go at the same time. I think I'd rather have the easement approved before I go for the site plan, so I go to the RTM first.
Okay,
I think that makes better sense.
right. And the construction would take place later this summer?
Yeah, it's about a 30, 45-day construction period. They're trying to time it around when it isn't so busy there, so.
Okay.
Going back to what you said in the beginning, I think, I actually recently put solar panels on my own home through the Solarize Connecticut program. And so one of my questions is, how did we choose this company? And is that through the grant process that we're
No, a year
required to?
or so ago, we let it be known they were interested in doing solar projects. And we received proposals from 4 different companies to go forward on different solar projects. 2 of them actually backed out as we interviewed them. 2 of them did not. Skyview, we chose to do some of the smaller projects because they were not as experienced as some of the others. There was 2 companies that we looked at for the larger scale project, which was submitted and not approved, but if it is approved, we'll be back here in another couple of months looking at that one. And that's Green Skies, which is another company, and Borrego Solar, but they backed out on a landfill. Not too many companies really were interested in putting solar in a landfill, and we're looking at potential of about 650 to 700 kW solar project on the closed landfill. So the one company, we rated the companies that are experienced in Connecticut, their experience with the state agencies, and picked a company to do that. Same way here, the local experience with smaller scale projects, the familiarity with the neighborhood, familiarity with United Illuminating, as well as the state company. So from really an solicited proposals, once that program was out, people started approaching us immediately. And some of the companies obviously were formed just for the purpose of doing this. We wanted companies that were experienced. So we picked 4 companies with experience, narrowed it down to 2, Skyview for the smaller one, and Green Skies for the larger one. So that's, and there are other, we'll be coming for other companies now are proposing another one. You'll see a proposal for the railroad station parking lot to put 1,000 kilowatt hours of power, similar to this, and supply the junior high school with that power. So, and so the whole point, they wind up being power purchase agreements in the end, because there's no, the private sector designs, builds, owns, operates, maintains the whole system, and just sells us power cheaper than we could buy it anywhere else, and that's the whole idea here. So it's good sense. If the program fails, we're not at risk. If the program fails, we go back to buying power to what we used to. There's no debt, no cost of removing systems or anything else. So it's a nice program from a risk point of view from the towns. And second part, from the risk point of view, we can maintain machines, but we're not in the business of maintaining photovoltaic systems or fuel cells or anything like that.
Right.
It's better off when the private company who builds it, owns and operates it, and maintains it, keeps it in that perimeter. So that's the momentum we're looking at here.
That sounds like a lot of win-win right there with that.
We
You
can only
answered
hope.
one of my other, yes.
Yeah.
In terms of the risk piece, though, that certainly
Right.
is, one of my other questions was about conversations with the school district. And it sounds like you have worked with them. You just mentioned something about
Tomlinson, yeah, we talked with
Tomlinson and the railroad station in terms of looking
Yep.
forward. How often and how much do you work with, say, Tom Cullen or Sal Morbido in terms of
when there's
looking
a
at some of
mutual
these
program,
projects?
we more commonly now than we used to, put it that way.
Okay.
It used to be rare, now it's much more common. We meet together in different projects, so maybe not as often as we'd like, but there are projects. We're looking at a fuel cell project at 3 schools, also meeting with them on that, this solar project and other energy projects. So,
Wonderful. I like to hear that. I think the more
Yeah.
collaboration, and you certainly have a lot of expertise in this area that you can share, so.
good
that's-
synergy development.
Yes, that's wonderful. Are there other questions that you
Just
have on this?
a quick follow-on, Ed, you touched on it, about the ongoing maintenance and repairs down the road over the course of 20 years. We don't have any responsibility to maintain any of it.
No. It's entirely theirs.
It's totally theirs, whether it's wear and tear or natural
It's
disaster.
by lightning, anything, right. They're
Anything
required to
like-
replace, unless we damage it.
Okay. Good.
Actually,
Thank you.
thank you for that, Selectman Kiley. So if a user of the rec center drives in and hits one of these poles, and are we assuming then the user or the
Yeah, I
person.
think we'd be responsible for fixing that pole. But, there's going to be got the word around the poles so cars don't run into them directly. Protection of some sort, so.
Okay.
Just one last one for me. Can you explain, please, how the optional charging stations would work? Would they be free of charge, or how would it be set up?
Currently, they have to be free of charge.
They have to be.
State law prohibits the resale of power this way. So the two we have now are also free of charge.
They are, okay.
But you could be looking towards a system where instead of charging for electricity, you charge a parking fee for that spot. So if we wanted to charge $2 for electricity or something, that person would have a parking fee for using the spot. So you're charging to park, not to buy electricity. So that's the easiest way when these things get more common to do that. So not exactly fair to have people buying gasoline and getting electricity free as you go forward. So, and it's much cheaper, of course, but that's the way to do it. That's the way a lot of the towns are looking at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from the public? Okay, hearing none, back to the board. Further discussion? No? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on, back to Mr.
Yes.
Bowman in a moment. Item number 12, which is to hear, consider, and approve the granting of an easement to Skyview Solar for the purpose of erecting a photovoltaic electric generation system on the roof of Operation Hope at 50 Nichols Street for the sole benefit of Operation Hope, the term of the agreement being 20 years. Mr.
Okay.
Bowman.
Again.
So moved. Oh,
Sorry,
Oh, thank you, thank you.
No.
Ms. Selectman Kylie, I will take a motion and I will second that motion and now.
Picked
turn
up
it
an
over.
inconsistency there in the lease agreement this morning where and this afternoon I got to change back so it does read correctly. Again, Stanton has approved the easement itself. It didn't mention roof, it mentioned parking lot, like you said, and I didn't
Right.
see that. So it was changed today to read correctly.
Okay, and I think we just have this one copy. So it's
Oh,
essentially
okay.
in this,
the language
in
is
this paragraph
changed.
right here, the second whereas paragraph.
And paragraph 5 we changed too, where it talks about some other things in the old paragraph
Okay.
5 we took out because it referred to parking lot maintenance.
Okay,
We took
right.
that out also.
All right, so to be consistent with the fact that this is actually going up on the roof.
Right.
As opposed to in the parking lot. I don't think we have room at that parking lot, do we?
No, not at all.
Oh,
Again, this will
Okay.
only be a 20 kW system because the roof is much smaller, and we're providing about 21,000 kWh on an annual basis. Everything else is exactly the same. The amount of, it's 8.5 cents a kilowatt, or 8.8 cents a kilowatt hour for 20 years. The same responsibility total on the private sector and the same risk as in the private sector.
One of the questions I have is in terms of inside the building and the users at Operation Hope, is there anything they need to do differently or know differently?
No.
Have you worked with them and had conversation with them?
We maintain that building and take care of the power anyway, so the changes that would have to be made are just bringing the power in through to the meter. That's all that would be done. So most would be done on the outside of the building rather than going through the roof, so it's easier that way.
Okay. Selectman Kylie?
I'm good.
Okay. Questions from members of the public? No? Before we vote on this item, I should actually have done this to start with, but Mr. Bowman was in Hartford, and forgive me, I'm not remembering the name of the award, but I think every time we come, we can't thank you enough for all of the work that you've done. But maybe you could share with us the name of the award.
Well,
that
the
you-
power of change.
That's right.
Power of change.
So we want to thank you again for all your work. You really have done a lot to bring innovation here to Fairfield.
It's my job.
Thank you and
Thank you.
congratulations.
All
Excuse me.
right. Okay, with that, are we ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
There's one more.
That's right, you're
That's
still
right.
there.
We still have, I forgot you're still up, so it's a triple pipe. This one is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as requested by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that the First Selectman is authorized to accept a grant from the United Illuminating Company in the amount of $15,000 from the company's Bright Ideas program. And further resolved that the First Selectman be authorized to expend the $15,000 towards the cost of a wireless energy management system for Independence Hall. And further resolved that the first selectman is authorized to execute on behalf of the town of Fairfield any and all necessary documents to facilitate the town's participation in United Illuminating's Bright Ideas Grant Program. May I have a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Bowman?
This is an award or a grant that came about as a result of participation in many of the programs that UI is formulating and putting forward, including the solar program that you participated in. You earn points for the number of people who participated in that. You earn points for the number of people who participated in the Clean Energy Task Force, signing up people to buy green power, at an extra cost, actually. And other points were given for participating in the Energy Efficiency Fund programs that they operate. When you earn 100 points, then you earn a $15,000 grant to go forward and do more energy improvements. Part of the program is also the town now commits to attempting to save 20% of its electrical usage over the next 5 years. Again, it's a commitment to try and save. It's not an absolute guarantee. And seeing as how we use 2011 as a starting year, we're already 5% there, because in the last 2 years we already have saved another 5%. So again, and we have the opportunity to earn another $15,000 as we go forward also. Also part of the program, UI now is entering our data from the buildings in the Energy Star program benchmarking series, which we were never able to do. We didn't have the time. UI is doing that with some college students. We'll now have that benchmarked. We'll be able to do it every year. And with them, they're also working with us on a 5-year energy plan to accomplish the 20% reduction. And it's been a nice process.
Selectman Patty? Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Selectman
Thank
Patty,
you.
questions?
Yes, Mr. Bowman, you mentioned that we've already reduced our usage 5% since 2011. Can you just talk us through, what are the drivers of those savings?
All right. The biggest driver of the savings was the piece of equipment we put in the sewage treatment plant called a neuro blower. That we had 300 horsepower Spencer blowers on that treatment plant that were put in the last time the treatment plant was upgraded, and they were not VFD. This is putting a VFD device on those blowers. So instead of running 300 horsepower, and then when you need 301, you run 600, you run 301. It just drives that in. But the other part of it, these blowers, you can't just reduce the electricity. There's a pressure that has to be built up behind it to make it work. This piece of equipment allows the pressure to stay in the same place while reducing the power. The first year, that reduced 700,000 kWh at the treatment plant.
Just that one?
Just that one piece of it. UI funded most of it, but they didn't believe that it saved that much. They went and put some meters on it to prove it to themselves that it actually worked as well as it did, and it did. The second one that saved about 100,000 was an installing and lighting control system we put in the library, combined with LED lighting. So the LED lighting is there. The LED lighting uses a lot less electricity, as you know, than general lighting, but we also set it at 50% of it, so it's lowered 50%. And so beyond that, it saves, and you can lower it as much as you want, room by room, depending on the type of room. If you're in your office and you need more light, you can just dial it up. That has saved 100,000 kilowatt hours. Another program we're putting in the treatment plant is the second one of these neuro blowers, which won't save as much, but it'll save another 250,000 kilowatt hours. The combination of these three is well over 1 million kilowatt hours. And we were using, townwide, from the town side, we used about 14 million kilowatt hours, I guess. And so there's 1 million right there we saved that picked up more than 5%.
That's fantastic.
There's a whole bunch of other smaller ones, but those are the three main ones.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. Those are great efforts.
Agreed. Mr. Bowman, again, this is more of a comment. When you talk about the library, it makes me think about our school system and having conversations together with our schools to work on that end as well. And I'm sure you will continue, and I appreciate those efforts.
For sure, they are working on with UI on these same programs now.
Great. Thank you. That's great to hear. In terms of this program, I noticed in our documentation, we don't necessarily have points broken out. So the 100 points, do you actually have a breakout? We don't have that on our document.
You know, and I haven't seen that myself. Exactly how we attain the 100 points, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I've been asking them for that, and they just haven't given it to us. So.
Okay, yeah.
As soon as I get it, I'll be glad to share it.
Okay, I would be curious to see that,
I am
actually.
too.
Yeah, that's a good.
I certainly, you mentioned the purchase of clean energy, and I know that our Clean Energy Task Force, they've been foot soldiers,
Yeah.
as they were for the Solarize Connecticut program. Clearly, it worked in some people's cases, so that's phenomenal. Just for a moment, my question is if you could talk a little bit about the wireless energy management system and actually the usage piece of it?
Yeah.
You
It's,
can explain
again,
that.
we just installed it in the sewage treatment plant about 2 months ago, again with a UI grant. And UI loves it when they see it. It's a system, it's a new system to the East Coast. It came out of the state of Washington. It's been used there. But up until now, it only been used in small commercial establishments like McDonald's, things like that. Our consultant with UI attempted to put it in a larger building right here. He also was put in Trumbull Town Hall, by the way. So Trumbull Town Hall and us have both put that in. Theirs in Town Hall, ours in the treatment plant. And what it does, you tie in the different points. It can control heating and cooling, lighting, also all the rooftop units individually. Every single piece of equipment is controlled individually with this. And the treatment plant has 100 pieces of machinery. They're all tied in. For the first time, the plant operator can see exactly how each piece of equipment is working, how much power it's using, how long it's running, and they're very happy with it. The second part of it, it's very user-friendly. It's all done ahead of time. It's programmed in, and all you have to do is turn on and use it. There's very few you don't have to be a computer operator to use it. And that's important because we don't have that type of expertise on board either, and we were looking for things that are very user-friendly that way. The other good thing about it is a lot of these systems you don't own, you rent. This we're buying, and we own it. And basically, there's no maintenance agreement. It's just there, and you use it. It's a very simple system. Can even control, you can even, with the type of ventilation system we have at the treatment plant we hope to have in this building, you'll be able to control heating and cooling individually in each room. You can have heat in one room and cooling in another room at the same time. And in this building, that's needed a lot because the way the sun faces and everything, you have it very hot in some parts and cool in others, and that should be able to work there. It also, if you wanted to, controls all the alarms in the building, the burglar alarms, the fire alarms, and it's an amazing piece of equipment. I call it God. I've never seen anything that it works so well in such an easy way. And again, UI is impressed with it. We're impressed with it. So there are a lot of these systems are called dashboards, energy dashboards, but this is the best one we've ever seen, and best one UI has ever seen too. So it's been very. I think Trumbull found it saved like 35% of his electric bill the first 2 months. Now they haven't done any improvements at all, so we're not going to get that kind of savings. But it's just. And then you have it's a public display. As you walk in the front, there'll be a display showing exactly what's happening, how much power you're using, how much you're saving, the temperatures and things like that. So it's very public friendly also.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. That sounds very exciting.
It is.
Any follow-up?
A couple quick things. On your last point about it being a public display, I think that's important because that sets the mood for people who either work there or visit the building, that not just we are doing this, but we care about these things, and it makes everyone conscious of the efforts and want to contribute toward those efforts as far as savings. So that's a great thing. The other thing you mentioned, when you were describing the dashboard, something came to mind for me. Some of the attributes of this dashboard and the systems that it's controlling remind me of the agreement that we did many years back with Johnson Controls, and it sounds like there are some similar things. Can you just kind of quickly?
The Metasys system, right?
Right. Can you just kind of quickly compare the differences between the two, and if you could give us a brief update?
I can. Metasys was a hardwired system rather than wireless. Number one.
Okay.
Number two, it was like, say, a first-generation control system. This is like a fifth-generation control system.
Okay.
Metasys now is pretty much obsolete, and they don't even service it anymore. We still have it, but it does certain control. It helps control heating and air conditioning, not lighting, just heating and the air conditioning.
Yeah. Right.
So lighting, we do have motion detectors for lighting in this building. So, but this obviates the need for all that. Everything's done with this one little system. So heating, motion, and it's actually heating, motion, and sound detectors for the lighting. So any one of the three will turn the lights on if in the room or turn them off if the lack of. But so Metasys does a lot with the heating and air conditioning, nothing with lighting. Okay. And it's much more complicated. The Johnson Control people are like, every month or two are in there trying to, make it work and optimize it and this and that and the other thing, where
Right.
that's what we're trying to avoid again. So
Right.
they have a wireless system now too, but
Right.
most of the companies do at this point.
Right.
But we don't believe as well-rounded as this system. It just seems to do everything.
Right. So if this program is successful, and we can further invest in it and leverage that across the town, we might minimize our need to move forward with Johnson Controls at some point.
Right, because their system's going to have to be upgraded. So this is like one versus the other.
Right.
This works, I think that's right. We would avoid that.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
I'm good.
Okay, any comments from the public? Come forward.
Please.
Andrew Graceffa from 165 York Road, and wanted just to ask, and I apologize if I missed this in
Mr.
earlier.
Graceffa.
I'm sorry.
Andrew Graceffa, and we're comments, so this is comments, not questions.
Okay.
But you certainly are free to
Then,
share.
as a comment, I would like to see, if at all possible, given the nature of the system, to see if there is a have a web portal for any of these systems explored in the future. So, given the public information. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you.
York Road.
Okay. Any further comment from the public?
No, but I'll do a quick follow-up on that. Is the current system, yeah, I know it's wireless, but is it controlled locally, or is it controlled via the web, or is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's local control. It's a
local.
possibility. I mean,
Okay.
because we'll be able to see it on top of our desktop
Mhm.
computer. So it's a possibility that could be done very, I don't know how easily, but it certainly can be done.
Okay, good, thank you.
No, and that is a valuable comment. I
Yeah.
actually know, certainly, even, again, back to my own new personal system, it's very helpful and empowering to see what's being saved and produced and all that. So thank you for following up.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
We are.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Mr. Bowman.
Thanks, Mr. Bowman.
All right. Moving on to item number 14. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Parks and Recreation. Resolved that Michael C. Tetro, First Selectman of the Town of Fairfield be and hereby is authorized to apply for the 2013-2014 Fairfield Youth Services State Grant in the amount of $28,729, and to execute such documents as are necessary to facilitate such application. And further resolved that the town match funds for said grant in the amount of $28,729 already contained in the fiscal year 2013-2014 budget in personnel services. And further resolved that upon receipt of such grant funds may be expended as set forth in the grant documents. May I have a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second. And here today, we have Tina Paulus from our Recreation Department
Please.
to present. If you will.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
I'm the Youth Services and Program Coordinator for Fairfield Recreation. Fairfield has been applying for and receiving this grant since 1988. It came about in Jackie Durrell's administration, and that is when the Youth Services Department was established. We merged with Recreation in 1996, and that's when I came on. It's a $28,729 grant, which does require a matching of funds. It's given by the State Department of Education. And as Kristen said, the funds are already contained in the Parks and Rec budget through my salary.
Okay. Selectman Kylie?
Just, quickly, we've done this for many years. It's been a very successful program. Thank you for that. And thank you for all the services that you provide to our town's young people. And we had a nice, robust conversation about this during budget time when we were going through the Parks and Recreation budget. And it's something that is very easy for me to support.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. And I also want to note that Ms. Paulus has served for a number of years on what was ACT, our local prevention council, and has now joined the Fairfield Cares Community Coalition, which is also mentioned in the grant, as a member to work together with the Youth Services Bureau, our Department of Health, our schools, and our police department and library, and other community members to continue to work towards reducing risky behavior, which is a big part of what this grant is about. So I certainly share that passion and interest, and thank you so much for your efforts with that. A couple questions that I had, I think that what I have experienced in terms of working with you and other members of Fairfield Cares is that we are always, and I know that you are always in your work, looking at how to best meet the needs, and certainly as times change and what the kids are involved in changes over time. So one of the questions that I had was, have you considered what I might call non-gathered programming? So I know that you offer some amazing gathered programming. At our last meeting, you talked about the getaway nights for teens, which is phenomenal. But when back in my days of working with young people, we have the gathered and the non-gathered, and I was thinking particularly about social media. And have you had any conversation with the young people about using social media to help get across some of your messages?
That's a great question. The Getaway actually has a Facebook page, and the Getaway director is in charge of that. The kids, she keeps in touch with the kids throughout the whole year instead of just during the school year when the program meets. She's very supportive. She's an awesome director, Jennifer Parsons. And then through Town Youth Council, we have a Facebook page also, mostly for me to keep in touch with the kids. But I can certainly use that.
That's wonderful. I think one of the things in reading through the grant, which there's a lot there to put together for this, and thank you for doing that, that your goal is to continue to survey the young people who are involved and try and get a sense of what they're doing. And I think my only other comment is I hope somehow that we can also reach out to, and I'm sure you do this, and maybe I should ask you, how to reach out to those students who aren't necessarily participating in programs but have needs in the community, and is there any mechanism, and certainly that could be something done in conjunction with other groups, but have you considered surveying the non-participants or trying to reach out beyond those who are involved?
Yes. I think the Getaway reaches a very at-risk population, and there's so much word of mouth about the program. We're getting 25 to 30 students consistently every week of high school students, freshmen through seniors. And it's just a social group, but they talk about real life issues. And I think that's our most at-risk behavior youth that we're reaching there. Town Youth Council is a group of 40 high school students dedicated to serving the community. They help me at all our special events. And just word of mouth there also, but always trying to reach kids that need us. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I clearly have a special place in my heart and mind for this work, and it's critical just because what you're doing is preventing kids and their families from getting into some really difficult situations.
I should also add that $6,000 of this goes to Fairfield Counseling Services to offer mental health services for youth and families.
Wonderful.
They're a great partner.
Thank you very much. Any further comment from the
No,
board?
just thank you.
Okay.
It's
Any
my pleasure.
Comment from the public? Okay, back to the board. You ready to vote?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
I'm a
for all
firm
you
believer
do.
that positive youth programming leads to positive youth development. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay. On to item number 15, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Advisory Committee. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution. Resolve that in accordance with the request from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Advisory Committee, the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan be and hereby is approved. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second. And I believe that we have here today.
We do.
Mr. Graceffa.
Hi, how you doing?
Perhaps you can share your role as well, since I did not, the chair, I should say.
Oh, I'll hold that later.
You want to sit one on the edge of the table at the workshop?
Oh, I see what it is. That's okay.
Facing the,
Yep. Well, then, I apologize for the size.
That's great. Can you see?
Wonderful, yep.
Okay.
I've seen these before, too. But I like having a visual.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Andrew Graceffa. I'm the chair of the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Advisory Committee. First off, given the circumstances, I just wanted to, I know Mike will be watching this later, I wanted to express, I speak for all the board members, express my condolences for his loss. And I'm sorry that he can't be here today. First of all, I want to sort of, as an umbrella of this presentation, emphasize the community-driven process of this plan and the effort that our board members have put into it, and all the other entities that have put into it. It's reflected from our process and our structure that we've tried to take for this plan. Our board members, actually, if you pardon me, I'm just going to recognize them by name. Jack Franzen, who's here today. Alyssa Israel, who's here. Meg Capodanno, who is here. Betsy Gardner, who is in the audience. Katina Wolf, Leah Algren, Kirsten Atella, and Cliff Myers, who is also here. And I wanted to just give special recognition to a couple of town department members who were heavily involved in the process. Sarah Levy, who is in the audience, and Bill Hurley from engineering, who is not able to be here today, as well as Kristen for all of her heavy involvement in the process. Brief history: the plan, as you may know, or the committee group started about over 2 years ago from this process, orchestrated originally by the Fairfield Bike Walk Coalition, and which organized a town-wide survey where we had over 530 respondents to the survey, gathering valuable input, which definitely served as a impetus for forming this committee. The committee had two separate entities, one appointed by the previous administration, and then one approved or appointed last June by the current administration. In the midst of that process, we also held a public charrette, which was attended by over 100 residents. Phenomenal event, basically a roundtable event where everyone got together and actually physically sketched and highlighted on plans about their concerns, what they wanted to see, and talked about every issue on the table. The development of the plan was done in heavy coordination with every affected, every interested party and town department. Actually, even if they weren't interested, they were involved in the process. And then also the technical assistance provided by the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council. Their assistance was invaluable, and I want to just make a special point of recognizing Alyssa Israel for having, in the past 8 months, having heavy amount of her time invested in actually working on the physical edits of this plan. Okay, so now on to the actual plan, and I'll try to keep this concise so you guys can have plenty of time for questions, as I'm sure you may have, since this is the first time we've presented this. The plan is constructed of 6 major pieces, essentially. The first of those pieces is a recommendation that the town, in one way or the other, adopt some sort of complete streets policy. What complete streets policy is very simply, it is a engineering and planning policy that accommodates all, emphasize the word all, users, drivers and bicyclists and walkers, old and young and all between, and what?
Transit.
And transit, as well as thinking of the engineering perspective as far as stormwater and any other impacts that the street engineering and planning decisions may affect. That's the first element that is presented in the plan. The rest are individual recommended measures. And the sections are in education, institutional and planning recommendations, enforcement recommendations, and the most obvious but not necessarily the most important but the most visible portion, which is the infrastructure recommendations, which I presented, or I brought a visual exhibit today, which is up on the table, which the large plan is a visual representation of the recommended bicycle network in town, and the other two small plans are recommended pedestrian improvements in town. The top one is actually spot locations of immediate actions where we recommend the town look at, and then the bottom the green indicates our current sidewalk network with red infill portions within that. So just to briefly touch on each of the recent sections that I discussed, the education portion of the plan, there's numerous recommendations, but they include such elements as coordinating further with the schools to properly educate the students and young people in our town about proper bike procedures and safety measures and that type of thing, and encouragement. As well as the town, coordinating with the town Parks and Recs Department about hosting educational events in town. Enforcement is exactly what it sounds like. It's coordinating with the police department, who's been involved heavily in the process by enforcing and helping educating users on proper technique and the rules of the road, essentially. The institutional and planning portion of the plan. Probably the most notable part of that piece is our recommendation that a standing committee, a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee, if you will, is formed in some way for the town that is an effort to bring in all the departments that discuss these issues and affect these issues and have regular check-ins or check-ups to both what is being actively discussed and also to make sure that to gauge progress on these plan recommendations. And then lastly, it's the infrastructure portion of the plan, which is exactly what I talked about earlier. Right now, the plan, lastly, there's a brief immediate actions portion of the plan. These are items that if questions come to us or questions come to the town about when this plan is adopted, what are the first things that the committee would like to see or would like to have happen in the town? I'm not going to go through all of them, but the first is developing 3 main bicycle routes. The first of which is actually is about 75% online, which is the Mill Plain route right now. Identifying 8 pedestrian infrastructure upgrades, as well as implementing the Metro Center pedestrian improvements. So right now the plan is in draft 8. This is the draft that was passed out of committee. When we passed this draft out, we asked final staff comments. We received almost all of them back sort of in time. There were a few comments that came in sort of past the deadline. We actually do have a meeting set up in the next week or so to address those comments, which came back from Conservation and came back from Mark Barnhart at Economic Development Council. So this presentation is an introduction to the Board of Selectmen, and just essentially that. I mean, it is an introduction, and it is a way to answer questions, have input on comments, and then with this interim process, amend the plan if necessary to address any Board of Selectmen. Finally, the intention of this plan is that after hopefully, it is endorsed or recommended by the Board of Selectmen. This plan will eventually go to town planning and zoning into integration into the plan of conservation and development. That is where this plan will be its final shelf place, if you will. Okay. There's some board members that actually do want to say a few words, if the selectmen would allow. But I'm not sure if you want to have questions before, or...
If we could do that, if we could have some conversation, and I'd like to make a few comments, and then I'll turn it over to Selectman Kylie,
Sure.
and then take comments from the board members
Sure.
at that
Absolutely.
point. Just a couple things. I think there is a lot to digest here, and we're obviously missing a critical member of our board today.
Yes.
So as we go forward with this conversation, it would be my hope that we could have some dialogue, ask questions, learn more, and it is at some point my intent to ask that we postpone this item so that, for two reasons, as Mr. Graceffa said, there can be consideration of any commentary, those that came in, but also it's not something that I would feel comfortable acting on today. I am comfortable moving forward with the conversation and learning more. So to that end, I would turn it over to Selectman Kylie.
I would agree with that, with all due respect. I mean,
I'm
this is a tremendous undertaking, and it's a great project, and you've done a ton of work. And this project touches our whole town, but in addition to that, it touches every citizen, drivers, walkers, bikers, every town department, our schools. I mean, there's a lot to it. So in all fairness to Mr. Tetro, for something that's going to affect so many citizens in our town, he should be present for a vote and to get his questions answered. But
I'm in complete agreement and understanding with that. That's fine.
beautiful. Thank you.
And with that, I think since we have folks here, if we have
Absolutely.
questions today, and we can begin the conversation at
Absolutely.
least. So I will turn it over to you if you
Oh, well,
have
thank
some.
you. I had a couple, like, big picture questions. Could you just, you or your board, if you could just help me better understand the education process? I know there's a lot of different groups to educate. You know, it's not just bikers. It's students who want to bike or learn how to bike. It's neighbors pulling in and out of driveways,
Sure.
sharing the roads, being respectful of each other. It's, bikers themselves, obeying the laws of the road. And it's, everyone kind of getting along on the road,
Yeah.
the complete process. So if you could just kind of help me better understand some of the more details, some more of the details on how you can, reach those groups of people to help them come together and learn and make this a great success.
Right. I mean, I think part of there's numerous avenues you can take, and there's sort of pitfalls or misses in each scenario.
Right.
And so what the board tried to consider is trying to be as cohesive as possible and realize there is not there's not a silver bullet. It's going to have to be a multi-departmental, multi-approach
Right.
thing to it. So the schools is one thing, and it's often unfairly or fairly a criticism that from drivers or from people who drive often, that cyclists don't know the rules of the road. And that's fair or unfair, but that we tried to touch on that too, that cyclist education, but as well as doing driver education. So for instance, the town publishing the rules of the road on their website and having a link in a prominent location. Potentially, working with driver schools and high schools to educate student drivers on proper etiquette and getting used to the feeling that as it moves forward, there will be more bicyclists. This will be something that more people see and more people come across. And then also, not trying to strike fear in people, but also, we're in this together. This is not an anti-car thing. This is not, that type of thing. This is really this is good for the town and educating young and the older population, and the in-between population is important. So, does that answer your question? That was a little broad, but...
It does, and it makes a lot of sense, because when you say complete streets policy, that's a great description of what it is. I mean, it's the streets that are being used by everyone, every day, in many different ways, And it takes a lot of effort to reach all those groups and help them understand not just what they're doing, but what the other people are doing or what they might be thinking and how to be defensive and how to be smart out there. So that's
Sure.
that's great. Thank you very much for
You
that.
bet.
Yeah. Maybe I'm not sure if you've thought about maybe the senior center, maybe making a stop down there and incorporating some learning down there for the group of people who go there. I mean, there's lots
Definitely.
of great places where you can reach people, especially with today's technology.
Definitely. I mean, I think, I apologize for interrupting.
No,
you.
please, go ahead.
That, in fact, as I alluded to before, like community-driven process, Betsy Gardner is a prominent member of the senior walking group, and having that, really trying to have that integration into our committee to make sure that those concerns are addressed was something, and that's definitely something that we're wholesale interested in doing. So.
Because, I mean, I've biked my whole life, and I even find, today, like, if I'm biking either by myself or with my sons, when I get to an intersection and it's 3-4-way stop sign, it can be intimidating because you don't know who's supposed to go first. Does the bike go first? Does the car go first? I mean, there's an order of operations, and quite frankly, I don't know the technical right and wrong. I always default to what I would do if I was driving, which is come to a complete stop and then defer to the group. But everyone kind of does things differently, and it's getting along and collaborating so that we can have not just a robust, complete street, but safety as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a gradual process.
Yeah.
It's not a switch that we can flip and then automatically come to heavy-handed with enforcement or heavy-handed with education. It's a gradual process and making sure that this is for the overall benefit of town. It as much as it probably doesn't realize it, it benefits drivers because it makes an overall safer environment for everybody involved. And if through education, if the drivers are well educated and the bicyclists are well educated, then they know what to expect with one another. And so, which is one of the biggest things. Unpredictability is probably one of the things that drivers often complain about, that they don't often know if the bicyclists know the proper thing to do and what the bicyclist is going to do.
Right.
So that's a gradual process that needs to happen. That's what this plan hopes to address.
Yeah, there's certainly a learning curve there.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Agreed.
Just to interject, we're talking a lot about drivers and bicyclists. This is a bike and pedestrian plan.
Correct.
So the
That's right.
other piece that I don't want us to forget about is even at that same intersection, in fact, one near our houses
That's-
where pedestrians are also unsure as to what to do in cars with
Yeah.
pedestrians. So it's a lot more people walk than use their bicycles.
Sure.
So that's a key element of this, and that education for pedestrians, for runners,
Yeah.
people walking. I think those are
Good
all
point.
pieces
Right.
of it,
Good
so I
point.
don't want to miss that.
But, I mean, it's great, and it's also great that, this item is on today's agenda on the heels of a couple green initiatives that the Public Works Department just put us through to save electricity, because, every car that's off the road is fantastic. Everyone that's walking or driving or everyone that's not driving or walking or riding their bike is, saving a car and helping to reduce our dependence on oil.
Sure.
And,
And improving the health
our
and
usage.
wellness. I
Yeah.
mean, you could go down the line about the economic benefits, the health benefits, the neighborhood benefits of these types of activities, and that's certainly a consideration.
That's good. The other question I had is, I mean, this is a bigger picture question, and it's a large part of this as we invest in this over the years is the infrastructure, because we are an old town.
Sure.
We aren't a newly developed, like my sister's moving to a newly developed town outside of Houston where they're building everything brand new, and they're building their bike lanes when they put their roads on.
Sure.
So
I
they
grew up in the Midwest, so I know those big flat areas all too well.
They have a fantastic opportunity to share the roads and build them that way while they're putting the town, while they're putting their town together. We don't have that, so we have to, manage our way on streets that don't even have sidewalks in many cases, and then find a way to find us a safe avenue for the bicycles to share the roads with the cars. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what are some of the bigger topics that you'll tackle first, or some of the areas that you'll tackle first as far as, potentially making some infrastructure recommendations?
Yeah. Well, just as an overall broad statement on the infrastructure, the board and the advisors recognize that limitation when
Right.
sort of going into it. And not only that, as far as a space and geographical constraint, but also as a financial consideration. So we worked with that, and we worked within the current fabric. To touch on, like the bicycle network, for instance, I know I'm going to talk about pedestrian too, but bicycle network, we looked at density, we looked at current road widths, we looked at topography in consideration with those things, and our map reflects that we're not proposing widening any roads. In actuality, Mill Plain Road has its bike route down it, and that was done within the existing pavement area. As far as infrastructure improvements, the bike stuff we talked about, the most obvious area to improve is definitely the downtown and beach area, where there is the greatest amount of density. There are areas in the north that need improvement, that have higher density and higher walker populations.
Right.
The Fairfield Woods, that area behind Black Rock Turnpike needs some, actually both sides of Black Rock Turnpike needs some infrastructure and intersection improvements. We tried to, we have recommendations to fill the gaps. First, for sidewalks, for instance, let's just fill the gaps on the network. So right now, which puts a lot of walkers at danger. When there's a gap, a pedestrian will inevitably either just walk on the grass, which is uncomfortable, or actually veer down into the street and start walking in the street, and then hop back up onto the sidewalk.
Yeah, right.
So fill the gaps.
Yeah.
Reinforcing and rethinking some of our downtown intersections that are high traffic, but also high where we want to increase pedestrian volume. If you can encourage people to come downtown, come to the beach area, and if they need to park, but stay. Stay and walk around and make them feel comfortable walking around the downtown. That can be it helps traffic, and because they're not hopping in their car and driving 3 blocks away. And it also certainly helps the overall feel and aesthetic of the downtown and the beach area. So that is where our core pedestrian initial recommendations would be.
Nice.
So,
Good. Well, thank you for that. It's a big undertaking.
it certainly is. I think that's one of the reasons it took us so long to get this sort of in front of you in a draft version. And we certainly, but a lot of departments and a lot of citizens outside the board have worked really hard on trying to get this.
Right.
Really try to be a cohesive effort, and accommodating all interests and all ideas as much as possible.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
You bet.
For considering all that.
Well, I won't ask questions. As Mr. Graceffa said, I have been a regular attendee and have certainly asked a lot of questions and made a lot of comments along the way, though as I had noted to Mr. Graceffa in a conversation yesterday, that won't stop me from continuing to ask questions and
You can
make
ask
comments.
questions. It's okay.
But today, for now, I will defer if there are members of the board, members of the public.
Sure.
And perhaps beginning with the members of the board who would like to make comments.
I think I'd like to have Jack up here, and then he'll go on down the line for everybody. So Jack is actually our vice chair, and Alyssa is our secretary of the board. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jack Franzen, 2760 Congress Street. And some of the things that I was going to say, I think Andy already touched on, but I'll go through them real quick. We are submitting the plan as a specific approach to Fairfield. We are embracing the complete streets policy, which does, address all infrastructure. Just about the only infrastructure we don't have to worry about is livestock. But if you look at the map, you can see that, the way this country developed in New England is very old. Probably a lot of the infrastructure has to do with people getting their cattle to the market or driving sheep or whatever. And as you go west of the Hudson River, a lot of the United States is divided up into a gridiron where engineers and surveyors laid the streets out to maximize access to commerce. Here was just the opposite. We worked with what we had. So even though we have a a complete streets policy that I think is being used all across the country. We are cognizant of the fact and trying not to make it a cookie-cutter approach. We realize there are limitations that have to do with the varying road widths, with topography, with the New Haven line, I-95, the Post Road, also the historic districts where they may or may not be happy to have certain materials used for curbing and crosswalks, and they might be very different from other parts of town. Also, there are constraints on the infrastructure that just limit what you can do. For instance, if you look at, like, I'm familiar with it because I used to live in Southport, the access from the residential, less densely populated areas north of I-95 to Southport Beach is it's pretty good access because there's a very wide underpass of I-95, and then you dodge over the railroad tracks, and you can go through Southport and avoid the Post Road going underneath it. Right. Go to Southport Beach, go to the harbor, go to the yacht yard, versus if you lived on Mill Plain Road and you gave your kids $20 to go down and get haircuts or whatever in town, you probably wouldn't do that because going through that underpass of the New Haven line and then hitting that three-way intersection with Thorpe Street, and it's very treacherous there. So it varies from place to place. Mm-hmm. And I think just making people aware of that, especially if they have kids and they're getting them to start using bikes, having a good map, having stuff on the website, that's really important. Another important aspect of the plan is compliance, which really doesn't cost the town, there's no direct cost to it. For instance, when a developer comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Conservation Commission to do a project, they often put conditions on the projects and also their regulations. For instance, we now have in the Center Design Business District, there's a bike rack regulation. You have to have so many bike racks per car. Well, the developer does that. The developer puts lighting in, the developer puts in crosswalks in the parking field. In some cases up on Black Rock Turnpike, they've asked the developers to make connections between the parking lots so people don't have to go back out onto Black Rock Turnpike to. These are simple things that don't actually cost the town any money, but if we're conscious of them and we have them in our regs and make the different commissions aware, it'll just happen over time. I guess I mentioned bike racks and crosswalks. There's also curb cuts, which if you make them narrow or you make them just the right size, they actually quiet the traffic down. There's planting that goes on those islands that enhances the whole experience of traveling around town. And then there's also stoplights and traffic controls that can be programmed differently to make it easier to allow bikes and people to go across the really busy intersections. Given the obstacles to an ideal, perfect built infrastructure, which we know we have here, and the low-hanging fruit of the compliances, which really don't cost anything, they'll just happen over time, the plan is really to over time maximize connectivity, because the real value of the plan is as things get connected. We've got the little striping section on Mill Plain, and that's terrific, but as this thing expands and as the different businesses start having bike racks and then people become aware of it, it'll be much, much better. Having the segments is great, but having them start to connect, which will take time, we realize is really important. I think ultimately it's really about access to the beaches and the parks and the open space. It's about bike storage at the workplaces and at recreation areas, and also integration of bike and pedestrian infrastructure with businesses. And this is where the economic development component comes in, where there are bike clubs that travel around and they want to get refreshments, and if they know that there's a place that caters to them on a bike path, it's good for everybody, it's good for business. And I know there are businesses in town that have in the past and already do cater to those people. So we think it's a great plan. I've kind of focused on the physical aspects of it because that's my background, but I hope you'll have good questions, and I hope we can get it accepted eventually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Other members? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Israel, and I'm Secretary of the Advisory Committee. Andy and Jack did such a wonderful job presenting the plan that I don't have very much to add, except for one thing. I just wanted to tell you that this document and all the research that has gone into it and all the collaboration that has happened has set us up very nicely for some grant funding from the feds, from the state, and from private funders. This is what funders, at least in the public health field, are looking for. They love this collaborative spirit, and we're really well set up to go for some really good grants to help us along. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's always welcome news.
That's right. Good.
Other members of the public or the committee?
My name is Meg Capodanno. I think I'm probably going to overlap a lot of what you've heard, so I'll try and just go through some points that I thought from a parent of 3 young children and an avid runner and cyclist, just other things to consider in our plan. And actually what brought me to working on this committee was not my own running and cycling, but was my involvement in the PTA. The plan is like taking a silver ribbon and tying together shared missions of classroom teachers, the public schools physical education department, and the PTA's health, safety, and fitness committee. As a building rep of the HSFC, that's our health, safety, and fitness committee, as well as a past PTA president, I can tell that the growth and influence of the HSFC is made even stronger by joining efforts with the education recommendations made in this plan. While the physical benefits to our kids from walking and cycling are many, we need to remember that the less cars that are on the road and backing up traffic during drop-off and pickup times at our schools helps everyone in town. I walk and I ride with my kids as many days during the week that I can, and I see other families doing it, but I know there are still so many families that don't do it because they consider it to be perhaps a risky behavior or an inconvenience to do with their children. And I feel quite strongly that the plan, especially the education recommendations, addresses that and can really reverse that thinking. And finally, just one other point that I wanted to share was just my belief that by raising a generation of students that are encouraged and supported and taught how to safely get around under their own power, that we will raise a generation of drivers that have a deeper understanding of the rules of the road, a deeper respect for the pedestrian crossing ahead, or the cyclist that they are about to pass. And perhaps many of them may opt to pedal, even if they pass driver's ed. They will choose a bike. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Betsy Gardner, 882 Reef Road. The former director of the senior center did ask me to participate in the development of the bicycle and pedestrian plan. I am Professor Emerita from Fairfield University, having taught there for 35 years. And one of the courses I taught was a seminar on aging. So I am acquainted with the value of exercise, bicycling, walking, being outdoors for happy and healthy and successful aging, which I hope to do when I get older. The plan development has been very collaborative. Andy's been a great chair. Everybody respectfully listened to everybody else's input and points of view. And I think the fact that we're on draft 8 suggests that we did that. And just a last sort of joke, I contributed to the economy of the town this afternoon. I bought a shiny new bicycle helmet, and I rode my bicycle here.
Fantastic. Right.
Thanks, Betsy.
Cliff,
Mr.
back.
Myers. Wow. Yeah.
Which camera? Anyone? Cliff Myers.
Just smile.
Cliff Myers, 180 Lindley Drive, Fairfield. But the hats off to Andy on all this work he's done. He's been excellent. I'm going to sort of cap put a little summary on how I see it. Every time I come to the meetings, which isn't always, I sort of do my own study on pedestrian cycling. And I use the word cycling as opposed to bikers because I'm not sure we'd want to have Hell's Angels come to our next meeting. I try to count how many people I see on bikes and cars, and it is sad to say that it's almost non-existent. Now, a lot of the people who are here are avid cyclists, but if you really watch going down through town, as we go through town, you cover a lot of space. Today, I saw no bikes, and I saw one person running actually on a sidewalk. People don't usually like to run on a sidewalk, and it's not unusual for me to see more than 5 people or something. This is a place of almost 60,000 people, so you should have more hits than that. So, in a sense, for myself, and I'm sure in a way the goal of this, in a simplified way, is we're probably the last vestiges of an outside generation that remembers to be outside in a spontaneous way. And I think what we want to try to do for us and who have lost it, and for those generation coming out, is to take, who are now becoming an inside generation, is to come back out and all the advantages that can do. A quick note on finances. I never get a sense that there's huge kinds of monies and outlays and all this. So when this goes farther to the RTM and these issues come up, it's really not, there's money, but it's nothing that's really, this is more of a long-term investment that people really talk about but don't like to invest in, because everything seems to be a little bit short-term. So in terms of money, we need to allay the fears that this isn't a lot of money. It should go forward. It's really more about changing behavior, which again, that's why this takes forever, because bad behavior is not recognized, and it's just difficult to change. So it's fair field, and what we would like to see is to have fair roads, and I think we can do this, and it'll be good for everybody.
Thank you. Any further comment from the public? Sarah Levy, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Levy. I'm a public health educator for the Fairfield Health Department, and I've also lived in Fairfield since 1980. I currently live at 402 Roland Road. I'm very excited about this plan because my background, I have a master's in public health. My training is in chronic disease epidemiology, and the whole foundation of that was that the lifestyle choices we make serve as the foundation for our health. We all know that life doesn't come with guarantees, but the choices we make have a huge impact. Things like physical activity or inactivity, eating a reasonably healthy, balanced diet, and choosing not to smoke have a tremendous bearing on what kinds of health outcomes we'll experience, and even the way genes that we may have inherited express themselves. So to provide things like bike routes and safe walking opportunities is creating an avenue for people to make good choices about their health. It can help prevent things like falls among older people. I'm a master trainer for an evidence-based program called The Matter of Balance that's developed by the Center for Disease Control and seeks to help older people reduce their risk of falling. But a critical element in reducing your risk of falling is maintaining muscle mass and staying active, and to do that you need safe places to do things like walk or bicycle or be physically active. the kinds of changes that we're making in Fairfield are being strongly encouraged by the Federal Department of Transportation. They've been encouraging and seeking a goal of increasing the number of trips taken by bike or by foot versus walking for over 10 years. The Center for Disease Control is putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into community transformation grants, which are all about changing the environment and changing policies to encourage active living and healthy eating. The State Department of Public Health provided a grant to Fairfield's Department of Health, which we used to create Fairfield's first bike route, the Mill Plain bike route. So it's very exciting. And going back to your question earlier about education, I just want to mention that Alyssa Israel and I and Dave Abraham, who's the physical education coordinator for the Fairfield Public Schools, met today with Jerry Lombardo and Jenna Paulus, who was just here earlier, and Anthony Calabrese, thank you. This morning to talk about integrating bike safety and pedestrian safety into the summer playground camps. And they serve something like 2,500 kids, ranging from kindergarten up through 8th grade. And Jerry's reaching out to the police department and the policemen that do the policing on bikes and several other people. So it's very exciting to see the momentum building and all of the different sectors involved in this. So thank you.
Thank you for that follow-up.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. If there's no further comment from the public, we'll come back to the board for any other questions for you.
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay.
I am.
Just a few comments. I know we've certainly spent some time discussing this and hearing from the board members, and I would like to begin by thanking the members of the board. And it's very clear, certainly clear to me as I've watched this process firsthand, but even more today, hearing the comments and the presentation, that this has been very much of a collaborative process. What also strikes me today is the level of technical detail and sophistication that is involved in this plan, which is part of what makes it, a full discussion.
Right.
I just want to touch personally on a few specific examples of why I think this plan is important, and they're kind of just real life happenings in town. One of them being the train crash. And one of the things that Mr. Tetro noted to me, and he had to point out to our Department of Transportation, was, okay, we're going to have buses come through the train stations. We don't have bus lanes. We don't have a place at our train stations. And so that was one just example of how thinking in this way, where it's a more complete approach to all users, would help us. The other is, Mr. Franzen mentioned the underpasses, and we actually have work being done now on North Benson Road. And we've missed an opportunity, most likely, there to provide perhaps some pedestrian enhancements. And having a chance to have the town be looking at this from all levels as we go forward with projects, everything from the paving of North Benson Road to next year, work on Black Rock Turnpike, to Selectman Kiley's point, we don't have the grids of the Midwest. Yeah. And as we do projects, and as the state does projects, or the federal government does projects, we need to be looking in that direction as we do them. The last was a parent at the school where my kids are in school recently shared with me that some sidewalks in their neighborhood were actually torn out. And what happens is, it's unclear exactly what happened, but what's happening now is that those students are, just as Andy said, moving onto the street to walk, especially as the new grass is growing there. So we there are some really good reasons. Those are just some vignettes, but I think you all did a good job presenting the various reasons that this needs to happen. I will finally note that when you look at this plan and the specifics of it, there are many things that are happening already, and the example from this morning of the meeting that happened, the education that's coming together, there are many good things that are already happening, and I think that Meg put it well. This is about kind of putting this all in one place and helping us to see that we're looking at it in a comprehensive fashion. So I expect that we're going to have further conversation on this. So to that end, I will make a motion to postpone this item to our next meeting, being our June 19th meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, any discussion from the public? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will hear that again. And thank you
Thank
again
you.
to
Thank you.
Chairman Graceffa and to the members of the committee. So on to item number 16, to hear an update from the Fair TV Operational Committee. I believe we have Mr. Kennelly.
We do.
Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
I'm well, thanks.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Oh.
I'll turn that in at the end if it's okay. I just have this job. Thanks, Charlotte.
You would identify yourself?
Sure, I will gladly. I'm Jim Kennelly. I'm the chairman of the Fair TV Operational Committee, and I'm a resident of Fairfield at Edgewood Place here in Fairfield. Selectmen, gosh, tough job. A lot of different varied issues every day. My other hat I wear, our stuff is just one subject, but boy, you get everything. I don't come here often enough to see it. But anyway, on with the show. 5 years ago, I was graciously appointed by the previous first selectman as a member of the Fair TV Operational Committee, and about a month later I was made vice chairman by a vote of the committee, and then later, about 6 months later, became its chairman and have served as such since March of 2009. This board was gracious enough in December of 2012 to reauthorize the Fair TV Operational Committee to complete the work of that original committee. And we were asked by the First Selectman's Office and this board to give you a brief update about how things have progressed under the recent oversight of the Operational Committee that you gave charge to carry on that process. And I'm pleased to say that essentially the work of operations, that is, what it took to build a quality, low-cost service, is now essentially complete. We will have to, of course, upgrade things as they need replacement and all the rest. But if we look at some of the items here that I've presented for you, in this 2012-2013 cycle in which the current committee has been in oversight, Fair TV has provided the largest amount of total programming produced in the system's 5-year history, more than 160 hours of original content programming. Needless to say, this is programming that is obviously available much more often in repeat format, but for each of those channels, it's a remarkable level of output hours. That's per month, I should say, just so you understand. The expansion of live programming hours has dramatically increased. We just had begun last year via cable broadcast. So, for example, right now, if you are at home and you have Cablevision, you'd be able to see this meeting as I'm speaking live. So, if you do, keep the language proper. But because there's no delay. The launch of live programming online via Discover Video Internet Service. Our system manager, Jerry Spino, in his dealings with the installation of our AT&T UVerse broadcast equipment, worked with Discover Video, and they provided 3 years of zero-cost online delivery of live service of the broadcast feed for Fair TV. Now, going forward, after 3 years, how much does it cost? About $25 a month. That's something to worry about 3 years from now. So that's another way we've further expanded. If you are a citizen and you don't have cable television and you don't have UVerse, you can still see live stuff on the internet as well as recorded stuff. We have full rollout now of the ATT UVerse broadcast operations, so cable and ATT UVerse customers both in town. If you have a wire into your house to get television, you get Fair TV. If you have a wireless device, or if you have any kind of an connection to the internet, you get Fair TV. We've created a Fair TV Facebook page, which you can get the address of off of the Fair TV website. We had a full and completed the rollout of the Fair TV website, which was an informational website that now includes good links to the Fair TV On Demand service. So you can click either one of our broadcast logos, either the little mortarboard for Fair TV Education or the little government building for Fair TV Government, and it takes you right to recent meetings right there at Fair TV On Demand at PEG Central at Fair TV. We've included new secondary schedule programming, including coverage of the One Book, One Town project that was hosted by the Fairfield Public Library, something I'm very proud of. And this was, again, through the initiative of our system manager. It's a wonderful program, and we're really glad. There's others like this, but this is one of them. We continue to upgrade sound equipment and improve the broadcast coverage suite. You're probably aware that if you see you can tell a Fair TV broadcast is taking place because you see multiple cameras. In buildings that, or I should say in rooms that allow it, we generally have 3 camera angles available to you that is constantly updated with our broadcast switcher. And we've also improved the suite with minor changes, things like better rolling racks, and that were very inexpensive again, carpeting to cover cables and the like. So those are some of the highlights. Not mentioned here, I would say 2 other things, or at least one other thing of significance. The Fair TV systems manager, Mr. Spino, was able to begin working with 2 high school interns. We've been very much open and had meetings with both high schools' media departments, and 2 students have made themselves available to work with Fair TV. Now, because most of the work of Fair TV is in the evening, that isn't a good match for a lot of immediate broadcast operations. However, Mr. Spino was able to work with these young people, and they're doing things that have value, things like helping us get stock footage of photography of sites around town to further illustrate like our broadcast logo and things like that, or anything that requires slideshows and all. Also to perhaps learn the messaging system we have, so that they can help do updates. Where as long as they had access to the system via remote access, they could do it during the day, where we would ask them to put up informational stuff there for the library or for other civic organizations who submit that to Fair TV. Some highlights of the Fair TV's operational committee during this 6 or so month period in which we have been providing oversight include approving language for an ordinance to create a permanent and independent Fair TV commission. Myself and one of the Republican members of the current committee, Alexis Harrison, who serves as vice chairman, we formed an initial subcommittee and took time to review the governance structures of different organizations that provide this kind of material, looked at the history of Fair TV and what we thought was appropriate and matched what would work for town governance here. After that, the initial language was presented to the committee, and then we had a free-flowing discussion over the course of our next 3 meetings about changes and things that we viewed were the best fit to meet the goals of fairness and openness and independence of the permanent commission, but at the same time make sure that we didn't tie the hands of elected officials. So as you'll see in the attached materials I provided, and if you have questions we can talk about it, we very much there was a lot of different talk about how would you ensure that that the membership would be independent and all the rest. And I think what you'll see is we've left some of that need for oversight on how people are chosen to this body and to the RTM, without very much in terms of spelling out who or why anyone should be chosen by party affiliation or by involvement or interest for other reasons. We can get into that in a bit. We approved a proposed increase in compensation for the system manager and video producers, both at rates well below other similar services within the same broadcast areas. That's the Cable Advisory Council of Area 2 for the 2013 and 14 broadcast cycle. I'm glad to answer questions. Again, those are in the minutes that are posted. They should be up. We had a meeting last night. They should be up today or tomorrow. But the important point is that just to give you kind of an absolute back-of-the-envelope understanding, for example, there are two other two other systems that provide similar services. One in Bridgeport that serves Bridgeport and Stratford, and where we don't know the exact amount of the compensation of the operations manager, but it's in excess of $100,000. And then one in Orange, where it's just simply the municipal government of Orange, and there the compensation is in excess of $60,000. The system manager in this case would receive, in addition to the many duties that are listed here and attached in the materials provided to you, would receive compensation this year at a rate of $40,000. Now, this is a year-to-year contract. It's not permanent. It's strictly reflective of what is available to us in approved amounts allotted by the town as of July 1st, and of approved amounts allotted to Fair TV as of July 1st by the Cable Advisory Council of Area 2. The video producers were given a very small bump. We added $25 per meeting to their work, simply because adding this live video component requires additional effort on their part, and also the continued efforts to have them break down and put away. We don't have one room where all meetings occur, and so essentially every time we send a broadcast video producer into the field, they're using their own cars. They're involved with all the setup and takedown of the equipment and all the rest. And we've added more equipment. We've added more things like putting down rugs and tape and all these kinds of things to make our broadcast coverage suites safer and more effective, and that does add time to their work. So that was taken into consideration. And again, I would say that that rate, which over the course of, say, a 4-hour meeting, if you divided $25, it's perhaps $5 or $6, it still puts those video producers at a rate at or below anything else that's offered for single individual meeting rates that are offered for video producers. And we're happy to, again, you can take a look at our minutes, but that's where that discussion took us. And I could certainly say too that in our discussions in our executive committee, just because we went into an executive session and it was a unanimous vote, but in that executive session, the feeling was that the performance of our system manager was beyond exemplary. Things like in his spare time putting together a Facebook page for us. I mean, you know, those things are small, but it's the commitment beyond the job description that is just outstanding. So anyway, I'll leave that there. We reviewed possible office space options for Fair TV operations. We have visited Sun Tavern. We have visited the Old Town Hall, where there are some possibilities. And we'll get into that perhaps in our recommendations in a moment. We provided continued oversight of system operations, including the requirement of monthly written system managers reports, including program updates and financial reporting. And to that, we have the thanks. I have thanks of our committee member Tom Flynn, who, in addition to serving as secretary, was a terrific stickler in us making sure that we had a set of procedures in terms of reporting, et cetera, that really only added to the professionalism and to the ability of committee members to fully understand where the money comes in, where it goes out, and to better fully understand how dollars would be spent outside our primary schedule and how much there would be available, so that they would understand the responsibility they have when we say yes, no to a project. A yes, no in October might mean a yes, no that is different in April. We have to be very cognizant of that, because we don't come back to this board for additional dollars, and we don't come back to the CAC of Area 2 for additional dollars. We live within the budget that we know we will be handed, or the dollars we are handed in July of each new year as we begin. We authorized regular reporting by CAC 2 members on regional and state issues concerning Fair TV operations. In this case, Mr. Spino has acted, in addition to being our system manager, but has been a volunteer, unpaid member of the Cable Advisory Council of Area 2, as has Mr. Flint. Also, the town's Information Technology Department Director, Mr. Leslie, serves as a member, and also a member of a former member of this committee, but serves as well, Pam Jones. And in this case, since we have 2 members, we've asked one of the 2 of them to regularly report to us about what's going on statewide in terms of and how that might impact, or regionally, and how that might impact Fair TV in going forward on issues related to how is the state of Connecticut viewing our particular region and the state going forward in terms of what are the obligations of video service providers to provide government or education or public access programming. Finally, we reviewed the proposed budget and grant requests to the CAC in town of Fairfield for the 2013 and 14 cycle, which were approved both by the town and by the CAC of Area 2. And again, that allowed us to make those choices related to some small bumps for each of those positions I mentioned earlier. We do have 2 recommendations. First is for the BOS to vote to extend the term of the Fair TV Operational Committee members through 12/31/13. This isn't something I expect you to take up today. You don't have a full board. You do have this month to do it, but I would say this. Initially, this successor committee, we anticipated, those of us interested in continuing to serve and to provide oversight to Fair TV, we anticipated that as the town's law department ruled essentially that the previous committee needed to be restaffed, that there would be a quick and seamless transition. And there wasn't. We went through months and months and months of meetings of the Board of Selectmen where we came and we waited for another meeting. So that's no excuse, but it's an explanation to you as to why we didn't begin our process for developing the ordinance language for the permanent commission, the Fair TV Commission, until really the start of 2013. Now, there were a couple of little items in the pipeline for the RTM called the budget and redistricting. And you'd be surprised to hear, perhaps, you didn't read the newspaper, that asking to try to get to be part of the bandwidth of what was already a very contentious and busy spring, we sensed it wasn't a wise decision. And it also gave us more time to reflect and look at what we wanted to do in terms of making sure that while we look to ensure independence of board commission members, permanent commission members, that we didn't tie the hands of either this board or the RTM in terms of who they would select. And so, and to think a little bit about, really think long and hard really about what is the mission and what is being asked of individuals who take part in a permanent commission that would be very unique. So anyway, my hope is that we have put this request forward. We did discuss briefly, I believe, at the end of last year that there might be a chance, since this was a sunsetted committee, that there might be a need for a brief extension. It could be as short as 90 days, but my thought is that the RTM will be receiving our ordinance language this week, and we were glad to have the advice and counsel, for example, of Representative Stamler, who's here today, and also Representative Becker from the majority side, about how the process works, etc. So we're ready to go forward with submission to sponsors, and then seeing it through to the LNA, and then the appropriate subject area committee, which at first blush I've heard will possibly be one that deals with education, but that'll be up to the body to decide. Our interest in continuing as a body, we voted on this last night unanimously to ask you for this to going forward, is twofold. First, there is a need for continued independent oversight of this operation until a permanent commission is hopefully voted in place via ordinance by the RTM. And also, there is a need as well for advocates connected and updated on the issues to be able to speak on behalf of the Fair TV Commission before the RTM. So by continuing, not only do we provide oversight, we also are able to continue this process we have of being aware of how much dollars are being spent, so we're fully aware if there's any problems or questions, what's going on in the larger state regulatory environment, and as also, I think as well, it allows us to continue to reflect and offer counsel to the RTM as we move forward in terms of seeing what works and what doesn't work as they try to take the language we offer them and craft it so that they're comfortable with it. So I'll leave that to you, but my hope is that this request can be taken up at your next meeting. We are sunsetted through June 30th, and so we meet monthly, so we would like to be able to meet in July and going forward with the support of the BOS, and I'll leave that up to you to consider that and hope you will. We also do have a request that the First Selectman's office provide office space to Fair TV, either in the Sun Tavern or Old Town Hall. Now, it may be other locations, but the reason for that is our broadcast server, the box that actually is Fair TV, the heart of it, is downstairs. So we would prefer to have close proximity on the network to that system. And I won't bore you, you probably know the story right now. Our system manager works in the hall in the IT department. You know, he's next to the copy machine, like that old Saturday Night Live skit. Just making copies, and he's sitting there, trying to run a TV station with an online service, 2 broadcast operations. He edits on his dining room table. We have no telephone number. If you're with the League of Women Voters or the Chamber of Commerce, you have to wait until between our shows, or go to our webpage, I guess now you can, or our Facebook page, but you have to wait to find out how you contact us. It's all via email, essentially. It's time for Fair TV to have a little phone somewhere and a little office where people can call with a voicemail on it. A couple of Mary Hogue, myself, and Tom Flynn joined the system manager in looking at some sites in Old Town Hall that are used as swing space during the tax appeal process that otherwise might be candidates. We're willing, absolutely, to work with the administration. But this is really, honestly, I can honestly tell you, this is truly the T to be crossed, the I to be dotted, and the operation side of this. After this, the work of a Fair TV commission will be to see that the system is fair, properly funded, and continues to run. Once they have an office, once you have a place for the system manager to cut video, not on his dining room table, once there's a phone with a voicemail, that's going to be the last thing, really. A system like this should have at least some place, and I think the town has been very supportive of at least giving us space for the rack, helping us with a computer. I will tell you that the IT department under Mr. Leslie has been superb in terms of their willingness to help integrate us into their network operations, and so we're very appreciative to them. But it's time for us to be out of their hallway. It's time we keep. This is being broadcast, but we keep equipment, nothing too valuable, locked in a file cabinet in the break room in the IT department, in the conference, it's not a break, it's a conference room. I mean, a little file like you pull out. A little office it is absolutely, but I would say that I think it's not unreasonable for the system manager to have that. And needless to say, we'll go on meeting here in Town Hall. That's not really anything the committee cares about, but a little space with a door and a phone would be a good thing, and it should happen. That we should, in the next few months, it's something now that everything's settled that hopefully we can find a space for that. So with that, the only thing left there for you to take a look at, and you're welcome to offer questions now, or I'm happy to come back. If you have other questions, if there is going to be a vote where you need a resolution to reauthorize, I'm happy to then go into details about this. This is going to be a long process, undoubtedly, with the RTM. But I would just a couple of highlights about this. You'll see, I'm rather verbose, but if you really take a look at this document, you'll see that in fact the actual, and this is big type and 1.5 or 2 double spaced. The actual document that governs is really about 3 pages. The rest of the materials are just addenda that talk about the system manager's duties and things like that that are already available in the public record, in the recorded minutes of the meetings of the Fair TV Operational Committee, which are available online at our town website. But this Fair TV Commission language that we're sending on to sponsors this week has been, if anything, moved from my vision of a much narrower definition of who could be eligible to a broader one. And I would say it's for 2 reasons. First, because I have watched and sympathized with Selectwoman McCarthy Vahey dealing with finding people. And the more hurdles to that, the more difficult it is to get people aboard. So you will find that, for example, when it talks about the nominating process, essentially all we've asked here is not Democrat or Republican or Independent or anything like that, but simply that you find nominees that all three of you can agree on. That no one ever sits in the minority, Democrat or Republican, and worries that the committee will be filled with people who aren't open and fair, that you can nominate from a unanimous, whether they are all three of one party or another, or two or one, or whatever it might be, or all three independents, that you can unanimously support the nominations that go to the RTM. And that the RTM is able, in a majority vote, to support this. This isn't reinventing the wheel, it's what the Ethics Commission does now, and to me, I think it's the simplest way to go, but it at least ensures that whoever sits on this board, elected by the people, they understand that this is a very important appointment, and it is vital that the people involved are very committed, because they have to really understand some technical stuff. You have to understand how the system works, not in detail, but the broad sweep of it. We're going to have a Bible for them that will be available when the new commissioners come aboard, that kind of, in brief, details how do you broadcast stuff here? How do you tape it? How do you broadcast it? How do things work? What are the relationships? But also for them to be able to understand if they have to eventually look to bring aboard folks to do the work, that they understand it. And it also seems to me as well that that this commission also, this body, the BOS, is going to be looking for not only people who are technically competent, but people who are truly independent and fair-minded and understand that, above all else, their loyalty to the town on this commission will be vastly more important to the long-term health of this town than any loyalty to party or partisan interests. That's what will be crucial. And I believe that you will be able to, that this body will absolutely, and future members of this body can do that. And that was the sense, because this approach, this language, was supported unanimously by all members of our commission. That includes two outstanding Republicans, in Liz Hoffman and Alexis Harrison, who are members right now in good standing in the broadcast world, as producers and involved in radio, television producers involved in radio, myself as someone involved in public access, people committed to issues of fairness like Mary Hogue and Todd Flynn. So my hope is that imprimatur will lead you to feel comfortable in supporting this, that this is not simply, this is very much moved from the original document that I presented or talked about a year ago with you. And I hope that again, will give you some comfort as we move forward. So with that, I'll take any questions you have, and I appreciate your consideration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kennelly, and there's a lot to digest.
Sure.
I know you outlined for us those beginning documents, but I know with the language for the ordinance, which clearly is not going to be coming before this body.
No.
But there's a lot to digest here. I do have some questions, but Selectman Kiley, I will defer to you.
You want me to go first?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, good. Jim, thanks for being here.
Thanks
And
very much,
And thanks for all your hard work along the way. Just a couple quick questions from me, and I'll take this other document, your charter document, for homework. My first question is, and you touched on it,
Sure.
you touched on this a couple times when you were talking about independent oversight and
Yes.
fair,
Yeah.
and as it relates to programming. And I know you've done great work with the secondary schedule programming that you referenced on this first page with the One Book, One Town project, as well as others.
Right.
So that's good. So my question is, to stay on that path.
Sure.
What efforts, what process, I guess, is in place to, because we're heading into campaign season.
Right.
Right. And we've always wanted to keep this non-political
Right.
and keep all that stuff out of this completely, and in every form and in every shape. So how is that going? And briefly, what is the process for getting secondary programming approved and carving out the ones that don't quite make the cut?
Well, let me state that the very first person I quoted when we took up this topic was you. Because one of your and my earliest discussions about this was, I remember your frustration. I caught you at the end of a long day of business, and you said, "Jim, just make it all meetings." And you were, and you know what, it was, and I thought to myself, God, that's, it's like cutting the Gordian knot. It is the simplest thing. And I said to the commissioners, I think we all love
But-
the grad, but,
Yeah,
and
right.
and you and I had that same
Yeah,
discussion.
right.
Everyone loves seeing those high school graduations.
Absolutely.
When I was ducking because I was when my son went by in the parade because I looked like a mess that morning. But but he was so proud walking by, and there were the cameras so people can see the Memorial Day parade. It's a wonderful way for our veterans to be able to reflect on the support the town has. So you're right. We want to make sure that we have a secondary schedule we're proud of. But I guess the simplest thing to start with is if you do look at the Fair TV Commission charge that's being presented before the RTM, you will see in it that there is language under both duties and under, well, really under just under duties, and then in under item 1. And then really there's just, after that, just sort of a series of things that are subheads to that. And then in item 3 under duties, where we reference issues related to the schedule. Because you're right, in addition to making sure that the individuals chosen are independent folks, we do need to make sure that there is a process in place. And that begins I believe, in the ordinance language. You know, when I was looking at the Golf Commission, the Ethics Commission, the Fire Commission, in the town charter, as we were working on this, Alexis and I were working on this, we were trying to draw on some of the same kinds of clear rules of the road that those commissions have to operate under, things that they can't avoid doing because it's there in the town code. They must do them. And that's why, if you look under duties here on page 1, under number 1, and if you look on page 2 under number 3, after all those letters, you'll see under number 1, the powers and duties of the Fair TV Commission shall be enumerated as follows. Provide oversight for the Fair TV broadcast system, and herein defined as. Such oversight shall include the promotion of quality town-specific education and government access program in the town of Fairfield by. So right off the bat, we're focused that programming and that, fair programming is there. That's the central duty. And if you see under number 3, it says, well, at least now it says, we'll see, hopefully the RTM will be supportive of this, to approve the monthly primary and secondary broadcast content schedule. Primary schedule, herein defined as, and bolded, meetings of the primary governmental entities of the town of Fairfield, the representative town meeting, the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. The secondary schedule, herein defined as town government or public schools affiliated events, i.e. graduations, ceremonies, parades, and appropriate, nonpartisan informational programming originated by the Fair TV broadcast system. So our hope is to become, as the Oversight Commission gives way, as the Operational Committee gives way to an Oversight Commission, and this may be a way to sell this, Selectwoman Fahey, if you're still involved with this kind of work. One of the things we're thinking about trying to say to folks to think about joining this is, if you'll learn about how it works, you can be on TV. Because what our thought is that maybe commission members can be individuals who can act as hosts of informational programming. Because, let me say this, there are valuable things for us to know about. For example, wouldn't it be good to have the tree warden on to talk about what's appropriate, what are the policies that are appropriate for planting trees, and what you have to be respectful for in terms of right-of-way and town roads and things like that? What about our terrific bike commission, our bike and pedestrian commission? Now, we might not be able to cover those meetings because it would be kind of expensive. I mean, 8 versions of the draft, I mean, that's oversight, I'm not sure yet we can afford to cover. However, I think it would be terrific to have members of that commission, the chairperson, in an environment where they could do that. So that is written into the governing document in the code. So that's just the first, so that's the first level, I would say, to you in terms of how we would try as best we could to do that.
Okay.
Now, I would
Mr.
just,
Bennett,
no, sure, go ahead, please, because there's more, but go ahead.
No, I get all that, and I see
Sure.
all that, so I'm good with the language and what that language would
Right.
protect and cover.
Right.
In the meantime, until this is a document that governs
Right.
as an oversight committee, what happens between now and December of this year.
The committee's view was that we would create nothing we could not live by. In other words, we would not impose upon future entities anything that we as committee members could not live by. So the view was, in a sense, that we were doing two things at once. On one hand, we were writing the rules for whatever future governing commission would exist, but we also accepted the idea that that would be the rules of the road for this committee. And we viewed it as a 6-month thing, but nonetheless, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So if I may.
No, please.
I think the bottom line is it's a vote of the committee or a vote of the commission.
Right, exactly.
That's the idea,
Right.
is that it essentially allows for the group to decide, so it's not one person.
Right, exactly.
Dictating what their
Right.
wishes are, and that's, I think.
And that's really,
my-
but
it does.
nonetheless, there have to be clear standards. That's what I would say.
Yes,
Is that
right.
that no one should be
Let's-
able to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let's see, are there other questions that you have?
Just a couple quick
Sure,
ones.
please go
Well,
ahead.
actually, one is a request, and I didn't have a chance to read every
No, sure. It's only
part of this document, but you did touch on, when you referenced Mr. Flynn and the systems reports and programming updates and financial reporting. Could we see an example? Could you
sure,
send us
absolutely.
a sample of what those
Yes.
reports are?
Absolutely.
And maybe since,
We get them on a
for-
monthly basis, we have all of them, so you can.
for consideration, maybe we should put a reporting requirement, or consider putting a reporting requirement, whether it's quarterly, annually, or something, into this charter document. If it's not already here, and I just didn't see it reading it quickly, that would allow us to have some, ability to see the finances and see,
Oh, sure.
and see what's going on.
Absolutely,
So
I think that's
that-
fine.
That would be
So-
a request.
I'll absolutely look at
Yep.
that
Right.
and see
Right.
how that's in, but that makes great sense.
Okay. And that's really all I have for now.
Okay, thank you, Selectman Kylie. I have actually a couple questions myself, and to back up for a second, I want to add my thanks, Mr. Kennelly, and to Mr. Spino back there in the back of the room, and to the rest of the committee for the work that you have done. And clearly, it has been a lot of work to come forward with all of this. So a couple things, just briefly looking at this, ordinance language is going to go before the RTM. And I see that your hope is that it move into the charter, which is something that
Eventually,
you
but
talked-
that's, yeah,
okay.
but the code is what's,
And-
for now, according to Mr. Lessner, is all we
Right.
need.
And just reiterating again, while we certainly hear the report and there is other action that we are going to need to take as a Board of Selectmen, ultimately the RTM will be
Right.
the deciding body on that ordinance. And then at some point, if there is charter revision in the future, that then goes into further conversation elsewhere. I think you answered this, but just with preferably with a yes or no, because I think you answered this question, but the increase in compensation is all within your budget. I think I
Yes.
heard you say you're
Yes,
living
with-
within your
yes.
budget means, and, okay.
We're
thank you.
we're very sufficiently comfortable with where we are, and financially, we're in great shape. There's no question that is very doable
Okay.
with all we won't
everything-
hurt in any way our broadcast. If anything, we are going to do more secondary work this year than we've ever done before. And one thing to throw in quickly, I didn't mention in terms of achievements, if you look at the budget process, it's unbelievable how many hours of coverage were provided where when you think about the hours that Jerry put in during that budget process, he could easily follow the letter of his contract and shown up at only regular meetings. And are you kidding me? I mean, he was at everything, and it's to be highly commended. And
Yes.
so,
We do spend a lot of time with Jerry.
yeah, you do.
Yes, we do.
And the office space, the request for office space, have you had a conversation directly with the first selectman about this? or
Not
is
yet,
this the
because I
first
wanted
time?
this. Well, I've mentioned it in passing, but I wanted to make sure that the full committee had the opportunity to look around and work with Jerry. It was important to me to. I'll never quite be at the level of say, like the bike commission in terms of engagement. I'm always looking to move ahead, I hate to say, but I thought it was very important for members to look around. So I've mentioned it in passing to the first selectman, but I think he has a few more important things to do. But I think for us, there's a real sense on the committee that once we know Jerry's sitting in an office, it's sort of like the end of at the end of the show, you started with one little camera, no microphones, and a DVD player. In the end, you have a fully functioning broadcast system, and the guy's sitting in a little room somewhere with a computer and a telephone. Mission accomplished. It's the last piece of the puzzle.
Yep, last question.
Just on
You wanna
that, so I'm
follow up?
clear.
Yep.
Sure.
You're not looking for a space, you're really looking for, if, in a perfect world, like a desk, a phone, a door that locks.
Yes,
a
I mean,
cabinet,
yes,
and a
yes,
little room to work.
And I understand
Right.
times are tough, but we'll take anything secondhand. But it just, he's still cutting it. When you have all these meetings, he takes the box home. You see that black box next to the black thing right there? He takes it home. It records the session. Then all the video editing has been. He sits at his dining room table that night, and he cuts it all together so that when people want to look for it, and with all the other stuff, it's there. But his wife's getting a little annoyed to having her dining room table full of video equipment for 3 years.
Yeah.
So
I can relate, actually.
So yeah, so
I have one more question for you, Mr. Kennelly. You mentioned the ordinance language went to the RTM. Does the RTM?
Well, no, we're about to turn it over.
You're
I had
about
consultations with Representative Becker and with Representative Stamler about how the
Okay.
process worked, but I wanted to make sure that all members of the committee were comfortable with the language, because right up until last night, we were adding things to this and subtracting things.
Okay.
So our view is to move ahead this week and present this to a number of RTM members who've
Okay.
expressed interest in being sponsors.
So given, just a comment, and this is for our consideration perhaps next time, given the time that it takes to pass an ordinance, I'm concerned about the timing. The term is ending and we're going to have turnover. We may want to consider the 12/31 date, for example, if the ordinance doesn't pass during this
Right.
session, then that it may make sense to extend that a little bit beyond.
That
just
would
to
be
allow
wonderful,
for
and we're
just-
welcome to it. I just want to make clear, though, that, I'm absolutely upfront about this, that I originally signed on to the ad hoc committee while already, doing another thing in town. And I did it because I kept thinking it was going to end, and it just kept coming. And so we are absolutely comfortable, always, with a sunsetted, short period of time. It's just, as I say, if we get longer, great. If we have to, we will. But I did check with the members, because I will tell you, it is a challenge. 2 of our members are, as I mentioned, broadcast professionals. They are very client and news cycle driven folks. But yet, even though they're struggling to be there and stuff, everyone's still aboard. If we have to go 6 more months, they all said yes.
They will. Okay. Well, thank you very much,
appreciate it.
Mr.
Thank you.
Kennelly,
Thank you for
and
the update.
I will pass this along to the first selectman, and I imagine this will be on the next agenda in terms
Outstanding.
of
We will not present,
timing.
I'm sorry to cut you. We will not present an agenda to the town clerk until we know that we've been reauthorized, just so you know, and the first selectman knows. We'll wait, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennelly.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 17, the town attorney, to hear an update on the fire department staffing. Again, as we are not at a full complement and we actually do not have a town attorney present, this is a conversation that I'm going to make a motion that we postpone this item
Second.
to the next meeting. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 18, Board of Education, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as requested by the Superintendent of Schools. Resolved that the town of Fairfield, 1, establish the Fairfield Ludlow High School Building Committee. 2, authorize the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for this project. And 3, authorize the Board of Education to file an application for a school building grant. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. So, this item, we don't have anyone here today from
No.
the Education Department, and I did have conversation just prior to this meeting with Tom Cullen from the Board of Education. I think there are a couple of factors going on here. Mr. Tetro certainly is much more well-versed in this conversation and had been having conversations. He is clearly not here, and I think it was his intention to be able to present and provide the information. So I will do my best to fill you in as I understand it, which is essentially that in order to meet the June 30th application deadline, the Board of Selectmen and then the RTM are required to pass this language, which is the language that is required by the state to essentially move the project forward and to get a project number. I did have some questions about it, just because though we're establishing a building committee, we don't have members for that as such. I asked Mr. Cullen about the second item, the preparation of schematic drawings, and how does that work if we don't have a committee? which Mr. Cullen assured me wasn't going to happen without the actual people as part of a committee. And the application, the part 3 of this is essentially, yes, we are saying that the Board of Education has the authority to do so. So though ideally, we would have someone a little more technically versed in this than
Right.
I am, I recognize there's a timing issue, and that this also will go on to the RTM for further
Right.
discussion, and in
Right.
between this time when we meet, and then I expect that Mr. Tetro and
Mhm.
Dr. Title can have a conversation to help further resolve or explain any of these issues, so.
Right. Well, that's why we have a government of checks and balances along the way, and we have good people working on this, and people I have faith in, so I am willing to take the leap of faith and move ahead and vote on this item. I think it makes sense, unless you disagree.
No, I am as well. I appreciated Mr. Cullen stepping me through that, and I am as well. So
Okay.
without further conversation with the board members of the public,
Mrs.
I
Ewing,
see
sir.
Judy Ewing. Welcome.
Judy Ewing, liaison to the building committees from the First Selectman's office. I'm not here in any official capacity, but I did go to the Board of Finance meeting last night, and they did approve the funding for this project, the Ludlow project. And it would be a good idea, I think, to go ahead and pass this and put it on the agenda, because timing is important. And if we can get in the hopper up in Hartford, then we won't have to go for any special legislation to get onto the list later. And it's important to get onto that list to move ahead in the event that the RTM is agreeable to the funding request. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, agreed. If there's no further comment, are we ready to vote?
I am.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and item number 19, tax collector refunds. There are none today.
That's
Item
great.
20, to hear, consider, and act upon any communications, and I do not have any here today.
Okay.
Item number 21, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business which shall properly come before this meeting. I don't believe there is any.
Not that I know
So,
of.
may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.